Hi there, welcome back. This is part 2 of our Rising story. If you didn't watch part 1, please do watch that for context.
So yeah, today we're going to do our best to continue the journey. So these are kind of like the Wales and Worcester years, we'll call them, which is where we've arrived back in the UK. And I guess we're asking the questions of the Lord, well, what next? We're here. Very real, normal things, boys getting into schools. What do we do, Lord? What have you brought us here for? What are you wanting to do? And then it became really apparent to us that actually what the Lord was doing was he was actually stripping back. He was taking things out of our lives. One of the really key words that he gave us, this was a new phrase for me, but a dry docking. This is where you take a boat or a ship and you literally, you don't just bring them into harbour, but you're taking it out of the water and you're bringing it into the base, the manufacturer's yard. And there's going to be a stripping back. There's going to be a taking out of things that are no longer required. And there's going to be reloading the ship with the things that God wants us to have in our lives. And this was a heck of a process. I would say we're still in it. It's been like a 4 or 5 year process. It's been beautiful. It's been terrifying when the Lord just shines a spotlight on areas of our lives that we just weren't aware needed to be rectified. But it was this continuation of this undignified life, doing things that seemed to man and to us like they were foolishness, but actually that God was working in us for his will and for his good purpose. And it was very, very precious. So as part of this dry docking for us, actually the Lord was saying, I'm calling you to family, that it's got to be real in the home. And there was this invitation that the Lord was giving us to basically to build something within family that was quite unusual. I want to say at this point, it's really, really important that there isn't a formula here. That I actually believe that our story is our story and it isn't going to be everybody's story. Your story and the arising for you is going to look very, very different. We don't believe that everybody's just called to leave their jobs and to walk on the same journey that we had. And I feel like a phrase that's been really helpful for us in recent weeks is it's the life of the arising. It's not about the lifestyle of what the Packets have gone on that needs to be lived out across the board. But actually, the Lord has called us very specifically to be to walk a particular type of journey. So when you're listening to our arising, please don't be like, okay, well, we need to do A, B, C, D, and E. No. You need to be obedient. Yeah. You need to listen to what the Lord is asking you to do, and that will be your arising story, and it will give glory to the Lord. And I think what we just want to be really careful of is that we're not trying to create a formula. So our dry docking, our calling in this season was to family. And actually we had what else I would describe as this ministry of availability. God wanted us to be available to him in this season so that we could actually build something very, very different for ourselves. That was going to be God working in us in order to work through us.
Yeah, and God gave us 2 very clear directives in this time, which was really helpful. One of them was Youth Arise. He spoke to Andy, and we'll share more about that later. But to me, he spoke these words, I want you to change the culture in your home. Otherwise, essentially, you're going to raise monsters. And we were thinking, what? And what he was really dealing with was our hearts and wanting to get to the nitty-gritty of family life and really clearing out the clutter, we would say, clearing out the clutter of what we're doing as a family that doesn't need to take place, pulling out things of the world, really, essentially, and saying, okay, if you could start again with family, what would you like to see the Lord do in your home and in your family? What things do you want to see what do you want your boys to become in the future? And so we went back to the drawing board, didn't we? And said, okay, Lord, what is our family to be? What should we pull out?
Yeah, Lucy, it's so good. And I think essentially the Lord began to talk about the foundations. And this is the most maybe uncomfortable thing when you've got so established in a certain way of doing things. And then God's like, by the way, I'm just going to take you to the foundations, the bit that's so important because everything that you build on actually in the foundations is going to determine the fruit. So I think what we recognized was we had a lot of the world in our home. I just want to be really honest. Actually, there wasn't, I wouldn't say that the foundations of everything that we did or the fruit of what came out of our foundations wasn't all kingdom. And I felt like it was a God taking us back to the foundations, wasn't it? And just saying, I want to lay new foundations. I want your home to be essentially built on kingdom values, not the values of the world. And I think we have this thing as Christians sometimes where, you know, we know how to do church, we know how to do ministry, but then we go home and we kind of relax a little. And actually, we do a lot of things in our homes that aren't too dissimilar to the guys down the street that don't profess to know and to love Jesus. And we're like, hang on, why are we watching the same things? Why are we living for a lot of those same realities? And the Lord was saying, there's a change coming, and it's sort of rising. I'm awakening you to a better, yes, essentially a better way of living.
Yeah, one of the things we felt we needed to do was we needed to get rid of a game that was really consuming our lives in our home, and that was a game called Fortnite. Our boys were playing it for not so many hours as their friends necessarily, but still it was quite a big thing in our home, and we felt the Lord say it's got to go. And so we were like, oh, how's this going to go down?
Other things.
Among other things, how's this going to go down? But we sat down with the boys and we just said, the Lord has spoken. We need to change the culture in our home, and this needs to go.
Yeah.
And they were incredibly gracious, and they didn't really complain much, did they? Initially, it was a bit tough the first few days, but they were amazing at just saying, okay, the Lord has spoken. This is going to change. And
So the boys ultimately recognized that we were acting in accordance with what God was speaking, and that it was actually going to be for their good.
Yeah.
And it was fascinating. So we did this kind of like, let's go to McDonald's, let's soften the blow, let's give them a McFlurry. You know, they were all kind of 14 downwards in age or 15 downwards. And it was basically just sitting with them and saying, look, God wants to change our home. He wants everything, and we need to give him everything. And just to say, like, it's really important that we share this. This took time. This was a journey. This wasn't an overnight thing. But actually, a couple of things we knew we had to do straight away, we acted on. And it was really fascinating because, like, Josh, our eldest, came home from school one day and he was like, Dad, the Lord's spoken to me. And I'm like, brilliant. What did he say? And kind of, I had my sunglasses on and he was, that's an important part of the story, which I'll come to in a minute. But he basically said, Dad, Mum, you've got to be strong. Don't let us put you under pressure to change what God's spoken to you. And I'm just like, tears kind of coming down my cheeks from behind my sunglasses. And it was such a blessing to us. Actually, the boys were on board with it. And I think I just want to say in this moment, for anyone listening that just feels like, I don't know how to start, just, I guess, start with one thing at a time. Like what we really had, which was important, was we had the boys on board with us, really. But it's not to say it was easy. Actually, God will show you, God will help you. And it's not a case of everybody's got to throw out what we threw out. We knew what we had to get rid of. And there is no formula. But just follow what the Lord's asking you to do. And one of the pictures was like a tree, wasn't it, that you had? And it was kind of like,
what brings life? And let's invest in the things that bring life. And one of the things as well is we wanted to see community in the home and to get away from any individualistic activity. So anything that one person would be doing on their own in a place, we wanted to kind of get away from. And so if somebody wants to watch something on YouTube, some fun video, let's do it together. Let's all watch it together on the big screen. And that was helpful. But essentially to invest in life.
Yeah. And I think it's really important to say at that moment, like, we're not anti-fun. Like, if you know us as a couple and you know us as a family, like, the home is a hub of life and activity and fun. This was the Lord saying, I want to come and change the foundation so the fruit will be good. But that included fun, community, faith. Everything that we did still contained so much life. We still created a YouTube channel. We still had fun. We still kind of did things that were like full of life. So it's not saying get rid of, it's just what is bearing good fruit and what isn't. Making those changes, being bold, being courageous to make those changes in the home. And it kind of created this vacuum that enabled us to bring in other things that weren't currently taking place, that brought a tremendous amount of life in the home.
On the back of this, we saw a real arising take place in our boys. And they're so excited to be able to share their story with you. So that will come soon in a future video. But so encouraging for us as parents to watch this. And so, Andy, I don't know if you want to share a little bit about the mandate of Youth Arise that the Lord spoke to you.
Yeah, very much so. I feel like these two words were almost like the first time that we got this sense of, the real sense of arise. The Lord spoke these words to me. We were praying. This is what me and Lucy tend to do. We're praying about things and we're crying out to the Lord. And then he speaks to us about something that we're just not thinking about at all. And these two words dropped into my mind or into my heart, youth arise. And I'm like, youth arise. Like they felt so like they resonated in me. I'm like, Lord, what is that? And it's interesting because I felt this question came with it, which was, what is in your heart, Father, behind the words youth arise? So rather than just kind of presuming that it was like, okay, we're going to do a youth work. God's obviously wanting to do something in the area of youth. Actually, we were like, well, Lord, what's in your heart behind the words youth arise? So we went on this journey, and I think even initially we could have quickly responded and tried to make it an outworked thing. But actually the Lord was like, no, I want you to journey with me with what I mean by the words youth arise, because we really believe it's more of a movement than it is anything else. It's not something that we're just like building a youth club, but actually it's something that he's doing in the hearts of those in this nation. And I felt there are two categories. So the first category, actually the Lord gave me that dream, that sense of, are we moving in the hearts of my young people? And it stirred this thought in me like, wow, this is amazing. This isn't something we need to generate, but actually God is awakening his young people. And I felt like, Lord, help me to understand what that will look like. And I felt the Lord say to me, I'm going to show you what I mean through the lives of your boys. And I'm like, well, that's amazing. Youth arise. He's going to awaken the boys. And so basically he said, keep a lookout for what I'm going to do in the lives of your boys. So in future weeks, we're going to hear their stories. So you'll begin to see what the Lord began to do in them. But he began to draw them to himself in a way that me and Lucy were like, this is incredible. What's the Lord doing? He's awakening these young people. So I want to speak to our audience today to say, be ready for the fact that the Lord is going to come for his young people, your children, your teenagers. They're going to come alive because it's in the Lord's heart to awaken a generation of young people. They're going to know him. They're going to love him. They're going to be all about him. And I feel like it's really encouraging that we can say, we knew what we did well and what we didn't do so well as parents. But then it was this kind of reality. This is how the boys say it to us. Our obedience to the Lord opened a door for the Lord to break in and impact our kids. And that's what we began to see. So that was the first aspect of Youth Arise, which was this whole awakening of God's young people. And we saw it in the lives of our boys. Man, it was so precious to watch the Lord just draw them to himself. Again, I'm itching to tell their story, but I'm not going to. I want them to tell their story because I feel like it's really pertinent. But actually, I do want to say that from a parent's perspective, the joy that it was for me and Lucy to watch, particularly Josh as kind of 15, 16, and Micah as like 14, 15, as they began to be drawn to the secret place. And it's been so wonderful that Isaac and Joe have grown up in an environment watching their older brothers just set the just a most wonderful example. Again, it could be seen in this video as like, oh, we've got this wonderful family. Like, that's not what we're trying to portray. What we're trying to portray is God really drew them to himself. And then they began this journey of consistently choosing the Lord, consistently going and making time to spend with him. And there's like, Josh sometimes gets frustrated with me if we kind of talk about being like a sovereign act of God. Although the Lord did say, I'm going to show you the arising in the life of your boys. It's evident that he did draw them to himself, but then they made that conscious choice to keep choosing him and keep pursuing him. So that was kind of like the first part of Youth Arise. And then the second part, and actually this is where, for me and Lucy, I would say this is the part where the Lord was like, this is for you. This is what I've done for you. And I feel like there were people that when they were in their like late teens, early 20s, they were so hungry for the Lord. For us, it was reading like Tommy Tenney's The God Chasers and God Catchers. And we were pursuing the Lord. I was reading about the Pensacola revival and John Kilpatrick. And we were like, we want more of the Lord. And then actually church life, ministry life, work life, family life, all these things that are good, they come in and they steal that edge almost. They steal that kind of Jesus being the number one focus. And actually the Lord spoke this thing to me. We went to Bethel in 2019. And actually the Lord had told us that we were climbing a mountain. He told us that he was going to open a door for us. And so I'm saying like, Lord, what's the mountain? Lord, what's the door? And I felt Jesus arrest me in my track to say, Andy, I'm the mountain. I'm the door. I'm the promised land. And it was like the Lord taking me back to that like youthful Andy Packett that was like, I'm hungry for the Lord at all costs. And I want to just speak to the audience today and say, if you were one of those guys in your late teens, early 20s, and you just knew all you wanted was him, I feel like there's this invitation, youth arise.
Yeah.
God is awakening that again in his people. This isn't just about a generation of young people that are getting raised up. This generation incorporates everyone that's alive at this time. Okay. So he's awakening his young people, yes. Yeah. But he's calling back those in our age. We're in our 40s. We're not done. Those that are in their 60s, there's this awakening, this drawing to the promised land that Jesus is in. And he's awakening this hunger for him, this radical pursuit of him, this like abandonment to the Lamb. Jesus being everything. What would you add into that, Lucy?
Yeah, I'd say this radical surrender and pursuit of the Lord. And it is a laying down of your life to follow him and laying down of the things that you count as more important. And so we count all else as loss compared to the joy of knowing him. And that is costly. It is a costly life. It's a costly calling. But we want to choose him every time. And so, I believe God's calling us all to that more fully in this time.
And it was amazing, wasn't it? Like God gave us like so many different scriptures that were pertinent. This is so funny doing videos like this because you're trying to kind of put 5 years into like 5 minutes, and it doesn't work. But certain scriptures that were just so important to us as I think of this process of, it was like this dry docking that was taking place, but like a sense of a healing and a sense of we had like the words of restore and repair and rebuild. And it was like God was taking us and he was showing us his heart for us. And it was so precious. It was the fact that the Lord wanted us to be oaks of righteousness for the display of his splendor. And actually, like one of the most pertinent nights of my life, I'm on my knees and I'm crying out like, Lord, what is this journey all about? And I just felt him say, Andy, it's about glory, mine and not yours. And it was like this, this like punch to the stomach, but it was the rebuke of the Lord. So it doesn't come heavy and crush you. It somehow, it's gentle and it gives life. And you realize, so in that moment, we're just repenting where our journey had been about our pride and our ministry and the lives that we were living before men actually being so unimportant in comparison to what are our lives like to the Lord? Are we pleasing him? Are we living for him? Are we actually the reality of John 15? Are we showing ourselves to be his disciples by bearing good fruit for him? And it was just such a beautiful journey, wasn't it? I don't know if there's any other scriptures that you just feel like, man, they're just were so pertinent in this part of the journey for us.
Yeah, Isaiah 58, but also Isaiah 61, where he talks about the healing of the brokenhearted. That was us. We've come out of things and we needed a real healing of the heart. But when you're healed of things, you can also heal and see others healed with things that they've gone through. And so the Lord has to do it in you and then through you. And proclaim liberty to captives, coming into a real place of freedom. And even up till now, like it's continuous, isn't it? But the Lord is wanting to set his people free from things that we're bound by, things that the enemy has entangled us in. And so there's a real freedom that we've encountered, but that we're wanting to minister to others as well as we go forward.
Yeah, Lucy, I think like the whole essence of Isaiah 61 is this sense of like, we can't minister something that we don't have. Like if our hands aren't full of something, we can't minister it. So this healing of the broken heart, the setting captives free, opening prison doors to those who are bound. And I think it was, I can't remember how many years ago now, but probably 6 or 7 years ago, we had this real sense of like the liberty that the Lord wanted to bring us to, the freedom, so that we could actually be those in turn that can help bring others into that same freedom and that same liberty. And I know we all know the phrase like it's free people than free people, but actually it's true. Like it might sound catchy and a bit glib, but actually it's true. And I feel like the Lord was saying, I need to bring you to freedom. Actually, we've been like so full of ministry and our own strength. And this is a very important thing as well. Like I really felt the Lord speak to me when I was in the States. And it was about this sense that we so love to have our strength we love that we want the Lord to baptize us in our strength. But actually the Lord was saying, I'm wanting to reveal the weakness, and I want to baptize your weakness. That's who I can qualify. Actually, I didn't qualify those that are strong. I qualify those that are weak. But actually, he wants to be our strength. And I think there's just been this unpacking and the workings of Isaiah 61 in us, so that actually the arising essentially can be a ministry that brings that reality to others, where our hands are full of something so precious. They're full of him, so that we can minister him. And again, that's something that we believe is a specific calling to us within the arising, is that we can minister his life to others in whatever sphere of life they're called to.
Yeah, and breaking off of that religious spirit as well. We didn't realise at the time, but we've been under religious spirits for so many years, and the Lord's just wanting to set us free from those mindsets and ways of doing life, and saying, I am the centre of everything, and just to come out from under that religious spirit and give us the oil of gladness and a real joy in the spirit. And when we're free, there's a real joy over us, and so we're just wanting to walk in that more fully and to see others walk into that instead of despair. There's so many people living in despair. We want to see them set free. If we could recap the last 5 years, sort of from Christmas 2018 when we arrived back in the UK to January 2024 this year, I'd say there's been a real dry docking time, which has been imperative. There's been a season of healing, heart healing, and detox from things that we've lived with, that we've needed the Lord to see shift in our lives and in our family. And
in the midst of that, it was like, first he had to do that, right? Or even though it's a continual process, he had to begin that journey in order to then give us the vision. And so I think, like Lucy, I don't know if you want to explain like the blueprint, the download from the Lord gave us.
So that would be the other thing we'd say, is the download of a vision. So in those 5 years, maybe 2.5 years in, the Lord started to give us a vision for the arising. So Youth Arise comes into that, but the arising, what the Lord's wanting to do and how we partner with the Lord. And he gave us 6 pillars. We will share that in another video. But he gave us a vision where we weren't looking for vision after all this healing process. And so that was really key. That's whilst we're still in Wales. And then in the last 2 years, we've moved to Worcester, and we've been in Worcester, and the Lord's been kind of deepening that vision and allowing us to work behind the scenes in a hidden place and to start laying the foundations of the vision, the blueprints he's given us for the arising.
And it's great to take this moment actually very publicly just to honour David and Di Harper, who took us in. We lived 18 months at Top Barn Farm. What a privilege it was just to be in a space where we could just keep growing as a family, keep developing the ministry, working with our trustees, with Steve, our chair of trustees, along with our other trustees, just building the arising, taking care of the things that were so important and needed to be sorted. And it was just such a privileged time to be at Top Barn Farm. And then since February of this year, we've been living with Dave and Anne Chapman, also in Worcester. And it's like the Lord's given us these places where we can just receive differing things in his heart. We just want to honour the Lord, really, just for the fact that there are these people around that are just have taken us into their hearts. So we just bless you, Dave and Di, and everyone really that's been a part of the Top Barn part of the journey. And we could shout out to so many people, but it's just been such a blessed time and such an important time. And then the time at Dave and Anne's as well. So we do just honour the Lord for the fact that he provided this kind of safe place, didn't he? Where we just keep growing, keep building the vision. And like Lucy said, these 6 pillars, we're not going to go into that in detail today, but we are going to do another video where we explain the vision of what God was downloading to us. Because as much as the heart healing was important, and as much as those things are important, without vision, we perish. And so the Lord began to download what was in his heart so that we could run with those things. And so it's going to be our joy to share those things with you in the coming weeks. We really hope that this has been helpful. I'm aware, like I said before, it's hard to just sharpen the story into just a shorter video. But we just thank you so much for listening. And we pray that this has been really helpful and that it inspires and provokes and encourages. We're going to do our next video. We're going to share about what's next for the arising as we're preparing to move to the States. We'd like to just share about that journey, how that came about, some of our relational connections. So bless you for listening.
Yeah.
And I hope it's been really encouraging.